You're live. So, ladies, gentlemen, crypto enthusiasts, staking delegators, and other people in the Cosmos ecosystem and beyond, welcome to this episode of the Staking Podcast. Today, we're sitting down with none other than Deborah and Justin from the Gravity Bridge, a neutral bridge from Ethereum to Cosmos. So, looking forward to meet you guys better and learn a little more about your project. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having us. Excited to talk.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Awesome. So, guys, let's start with the beginning. I'm pretty sure you get this question a lot, but I like to ask it always. If you can go over a little bit about you, how you got into crypto in the first place, and how you landed in the Cosmos ecosystem. If you want, Deborah, you can start, and then goes Justin, or as you please, guys.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. So, I think that even before Bitcoin, I was always very interested in distributed computing and was involved in a project called Folding at Home, which is a really neat sort of distributed compute project with folding proteins. So instead of having to use a big centralized supercomputer, they could decentralize out that with a bunch of volunteers. So early on, got excited about Bitcoin, did some mining and Ethereum mining, which, of course, now there's a successful merge, and we have Ethereum proof of stake, which is exciting. We worked on applying the distributed components to Althea, which is a distributed routing and decentralized mesh network for internet networks and multi-entity network. And, we really ended up in Cosmos because of looking for a place, the best place for Althea to live. And then the rest is kind of history. Well, I'm sure we'll dive into.
Totally. What about you, Justin?
Yeah, so kind of similar. I've always really been into open source tech and playing around with Linux. And I was in high school when Bitcoin came out, and I thought it was really exciting, really interesting. And I sort of lost interest as it became more about the price and less about the technology. But by then I had already thought about and was really excited about the idea of a blockchain powered mesh network, changing the way people bought bandwidth. And that idea stuck with me, all through college. And then I, graduated, got a job after college. And one day I asked myself, what do I want to do? I'm a pretty good engineer at this point. I'm like, this is what I want to build. It came to me that I wanted to build that vision of a distributed mesh network. And I thought for sure somebody would have beaten me to it. So, I went home and I looked up all the different Ethereum stuff going on at the time. And I found well, it's still not here. Where is it? Where is the blockchain ISP that's going to make it better, that's going to make internet service better and provide a better way to sort of connect the world. And so I got started, and that's how I met Deborah and Jahan, the co-founders of Althea, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Awesome. Sounds great. And that question on college, like what I'm going to do with my life, it's a very common question, but I believe that you ask yourself the right question in that case. Thank you, guys. So moving on to Gravity Bridge, on a high level, very simple. What is Gravity Bridge, and what is the overall objective or goal of your project?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And to start, so I need to give some context here. So over the last several years, the Althea team has been working on building a distributed ISP, and we've really made great strides. We have many home users, regular people buying and selling bandwidth using, in this case, DAI. And we really had to ask ourselves, well, what's the next step? And the next step was that we needed a more stable platform for buying and selling bandwidth, something that wasn't what I'm going to call a financial blockchain. And what I mean by a financial blockchain is that for Ethereum and such, it is correct that the person who pays the highest fee gets the block space because the primary purpose of the chain is finance. Whereas for, let's say that we have millions of people using Althea, and there's, for one reason or another, a enormous increase in data usage. Let's say it's the Super Bowl and everybody's streaming it, or the World Cup and everybody's streaming that. Well, we can't have the fees go 1,000 times larger, and everybody's bandwidth payments still need to make it in a predictable amount of time. So this is a different requirement. This is a telecom blockchain, and that's what we determined we needed for Althea, something that was a reliable platform for in a different way than a finance platform needed to work. And that led us to our first requirement, which is that we needed stablecoins, and those are all on Ethereum. So if we're going to build a, if we were going to build a Althea blockchain in the Cosmos ecosystem, we needed a bridge, and we took a look at the options, and we weren't happy with them. We didn't feel that they met the level of security and decentralization we wanted for our community. So we decided that we were going to design and build Gravity Bridge. Because in classic style, if you want it done right, you have to do it yourself. So now that I have given that block of background, Gravity Bridge is a decentralized bridge between the Cosmos and Ethereum ecosystems, with the primary goal of being as distributed and as simple as possible, meaning that we are the only bridge between Ethereum and Cosmos that is fully decentralized, meaning that there is no upgrade key, there are no permissioned roles of any kind, there are no special team abilities, no special team powers. Whereas all the other bridges, the team could upgrade the contract, the team could halt the relayers, the team could modify the parameters of the bridge. That does not exist with Gravity Bridge. It is entirely run by the validator set, and there are no special roles or centralized powers of any kind. And this is a really big achievement. It's what we set out to do in the first place, is to build a bridge that we could, for Althea, tell Althea customers to use and feel happy about it. And I think this impacts a lot about how we think, about what we do, is that when you're helping provide somebody internet service or bringing somebody into this distributed internet service network, you go to their house and you say, hey, I'm here to help install the equipment and get you online. And you have to look your customers in the eye and be like, yeah, this is what's best. And that results in a little bit of a different philosophy than a lot of other crypto projects.
Yeah, could I add a little bit of color here? To one of the things I think Justin didn't mention here is that we started the sort of thought around Gravity Bridge back in 2020. So it's been, several years of, work and progress. And one of the other things that I wanted to also highlight is this decentralization and open access, where any of the Cosmos projects can connect to it. They can build a front end. It's permissionless. Was a lot of the almost Linux-like approach to building the bridge. It's open source. People can use it. It's actually been the module itself has been forked and used in projects like Sommelier and Injective and Ume. And really, when you build something with that open access, that adherence to simple and decentralization, that's really where we have the practical sustainability, where the project lives on and is useful for many people in different ways. And so I think we started with this project with really ruthless pragmatism, like this is what's needed for a specific application. But I think that you can see now the sustainability approach is really focused on that decentralization.
Totally. And thank you for that little color, as you say, Deborah. And for me, Gravity Bridge it's amazing, and you can see it as a public good, right? People can just go ahead and get a copy of the code, clone it, and use it. And you have seen the other Cosmos networks using this integration with Gravity Bridge, which I find amazing. Thank you guys for providing like the good sides of the bridge. So you mentioned decentralization, you mentioned that the contract is non-upgradable, You mentioned that you don't have any special powers or override codes to get control of the bridge, and for me that's great. It's a very good approach if we want to contribute to the decentralized economy, right? I don't know if you want to go a little deeper in what do you think, because there are good things about the bridge, right? But I don't know, none system is perfect. So could you expand a little maybe on what are the downsides of Gravity Bridge, or the things that you don't like, or the risk of the bridge?
Yeah, so no bridge is risk-free. And so how should I put this? When we were doing the Gravity Bridge design, we did sort of a pre-mortem. We looked at how other bridges had failed. And we said, well, how was this bridge hacked? How did this bridge never get finished? And the answer was normally that they let things get too complicated. They kept on trying to reduce risk, and in the process, they would add another layer of complexity. And then they'd be like, oh, we've got new risk here, and they'd add another layer of complexity. And pretty soon, they would lose track of what was going on. And we've really seen this with a lot of the bridge contracts where they weren't actually verifying signatures, or there was some check failure. Ultimately, these sound like very simple failures. And in micro, they are. But in macro, bridges are very complicated at minimum. The simplest bridge you can design is still scary complicated. So the more you add on top of that, the more and more uncontrollable it gets, until it seems like you're like, well, how could they? I forget which bridge, but one of the failures is they had a function that verified signatures, and that function, and somebody substituted it by calling another function, and you're like, well, how do you overlook that? And the answer is that there's too much stuff to look at. Mm-hmm. So what we chose was to pick our battles specifically, and say and state our trust assumptions. So the trust assumption is that Gravity Bridge is as secure as the validator set. So you look at the validator set, that is the exact voting power in the bridge contract, and that's it. And some people are uncomfortable with that. They're like, you should add some extra layer of protection, some insurance scheme, some additional complexity. And the more we looked at that, the more we decided it wasn't worth it. And this does limit us in that it makes it, for example, for the Ethereum merge, we had to pause the bridge earlier and resume the bridge a little later than more centralized projects, because there's more coordination required to do anything. And likewise, we are limited in how many new features we ship, or obviously we can't add any additional features to the Ethereum contract. And the ability, so we decided to not upgrade the Ethereum contract, because upgradability is a whole nother layer of vulnerabilities. You've got the code required to redirect the contract once it's upgraded. You've got the actual process of upgrading the contract, which is difficult, and as we've seen in a few bridges, failure prone. So that means whatever we have deployed as the Gravity Bridge contract is it. If there is some as of yet unknown Solidity vulnerability, then that's that. We're kind of stuck with it, and we have to adapt from there. But this encouraged us to shrink the contract down until it was the smallest thing we could possibly build. It's about 700 lines, which is I think at least an order of magnitude smaller than other major bridge contracts. And I think that as a focus, this has provided a lot more security than we have potentially lost. The optionality that we have lost here was not worth it to have, in terms of what you have to pay in potential failures. And this sort of philosophy you see a lot, very focused decisions.
Yeah, I think just to kind of add to that with a little bit more color again, it's really this idea that Gravity Bridge is infrastructure, right? When you're crossing over a bridge, if you think about your sewer system or anything that's really important, you really don't care if it's, if you have a fancy railing, if you have these bells and whistles. And this is usually Gravity's biggest, criticism. It doesn't have features, but we didn't optimize for marketing. We realized that Gravity Bridge is infrastructure. It needs to work and work reliably day in and day out. That's all we really care about. All you really want to do when you're flushing the toilet is just make sure that it works. Right? So it was with this, adherence to this, the Gravity Bridges infrastructure in mind. And I think Justin did a great job of just sort of talking about how all of that, all the simplicity really does benefit the end user. So yeah, I think that's the the advantage of it. And when we think about actual usability, that's all you really care about. Just needs to work.
Totally.
Be boring.
It has to do the job, and that flushing the toilet example was great, Deborah. Thank you for that. Thank you for your thoughts, guys. And as you explained this to me, it makes perfect sense. The simpler, the better, in my opinion. And just like you say, Justin, the more layers you add to a system, the more complex it becomes. So that's great. Excellent approach. Just to switching a little bit the conversation before going deeper in more things that Gravity Bridge is doing for the ecosystem. I wanted to get this question out of the way. Actually, it's about the Graviton token, Grab, GRAB, right? So as for now, we know that it is used to pay for fees in Gravity Bridge. It's used for voting rights in governance. You can stake the token to validators like Stakin, for example. Can you go over other incentives for Gravity token holders to hold that token?
Well, the Gravity Bridge is a decentralized project, so the vision and roadmap is going to be determined by the community. So, I mean, we can only really speak for the way that the project is designed. But one thing I think that's interesting is that Gravity token holders can receive fees in the tokens being bridged. So if you're bridging across USDC, token holders can actually accumulate the fees or the in USDC. So you can hold and Grav and get USDC as part of that. And so I think that's very possible that the community might take the approach of adding in fees at a later time that do that. And then there's some really interesting things you can do in terms of like protocol liquidity as well. So with interchain accounts now, Grav token holders could actually do protocol liquidity on other DEXs like, Cento or Osmosis or something like that, and then also earn fees that way. Or they could partner with projects who are using the bridge and, have an exchange of tokens that are staked, or you have a liquid derivative. There's a lot of really exciting like cross-chain things that can happen, but I think there's a lot of also flexibility in the token economics design that allows token holders to potentially earn just the fees and the tokens that are being bridged.
Awesome. And yes, I noticed that you have this incentivized pool on Crescent Network, for example, on Crescent Swap. With the B3 and the Gravity token, so that's another way to earn some extra tokens if you like to do that kind of stuff. So awesome. Kristen uses the Gravity Bridge, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Go ahead, Justin.
Oh, okay. So the Gravity Bridge community has voted on several different incentivized pools, and this is what to provide Grav from the community pool. To help incentivize liquidity on Crescent and on other DEXs. And I think this kind of harks back to what Deborah was just talking about, is that when we say Gravity Bridge is, a decentralized chain and backed by the decisions of the Grav token holders, this is, we mean that very literally. So so all decisions are put up to governance vote, and we take a bit of a different approach than the rest of sort of the Cosmos ecosystem, in that we try to make sure that every governance vote actually executes something. And this is the general sentiment of the community, is that Gravity Bridge governance as a DAO should be empowered to do what it wants to do. So this is why, and this is once again, as opposed to more centralized bridges, where effectively if the team says something's going to happen, it's going to happen because they ultimately have some ability to control the bridge.
That's right.
Other bridges can literally be turned off by the development team. So, I mean, what power does the governance vote actually have in that case? Whereas we're definitely in the opposite case. So we can say what we think the Gravity Bridge community should do and what we would like to see happen, but these are not guarantees. Ultimately, the community has to do things because that is how everything is actually executed. So yeah, there are some exciting possibilities in the future for Gravity Bridge around incentives, around Gravity Bridge governance, more directly controlling incentives on other chains and getting into protocol-owned liquidity, getting into providing extra APIs, query interfaces, really a cross-chain future made possible by interchain accounts, which I will wrap up here before I take over your whole podcast.
No worries.
One thing I want to add, just on this train of thought is, blockchains are not corporations. And if you're in blockchain and you're building a corporation, why are you here? All blockchains should be executed by the will of the community in a decentralized way. So just a moment of pause saying, like, if blockchains aren't like this way, what are we doing building corporations over in a decentralized, structure? And that's my bit of spiciness to the podcast.
Thank you for spicing things up there, and I totally agree with you. If it comes to me, I would rather all Web2 and legacy company stay where they are, and we can keep thriving in this Web3 decentralized economy. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a great structure over there in corporate land. Go build corporations where they're supposed to be, but don't bring corporations to blockchain.
Totally. And thank you for sharing a little bit on the future plans of Gravity Bridge, the Gravity token. I actually agree with you about the community. I almost every day go to the Gravity Bridge Discord and see people like Michael, for example. He sends messages every day. There is another guy too with a weird name. I don't have it on mind right now, but the community is very active. It's very engaging, and during a bear market, you see kind of less people involved in the spaces. And I gotta tell you guys, and this might make you feel good, when I go to Gravity Bridge Discord, I always see it full of messages. So even if in a bear market you see a community engaged, you see the developers working, you see the proposals going out, for me that says a lot about a project, and just wanted to let you know that, guys. So moving on those incentives actually that you have, sorry, initiatives, okay. I know that you're working on things like you have working groups for the interchain security, if I'm not mistaken. No, interchain account working group, right? You also are working on the ICS standard for NFTs, if I'm not mistaken. Can you provide some updates on that?
Yeah, so it's exciting. So early on, Gravity Bridge sort of proposed the idea that there would be federated working groups that would work on different aspects of the development and marketing and community. And there's actually speaking about community, there's a Gravity Bridge community group that supports some of the channels like Reddit and things like that gets the word out about what's going on, which is amazing, and we've got lots of great folks there. And then there's the ICS 721, which is also just an amazing working group that consists of different developers from all of the different NFT projects. Iris, Stargaze, Omniflix, and a ton of other folks that come together to really work on that interoperable standard, sending NFT tokens across IBC. And just to see the Cosmos ecosystem come together like that and work on a standard it's been really a privilege. And I think we're getting very close to bridging NFTs from Ethereum to Cosmos, right? Super exciting. We had a really great, if you didn't have a chance to listen to it, there's also a Twitter Spaces that talked a little bit about where everything's at. The Stargaze community recently announced an airdrop for an Ethereum project that's working with them. So really, we're just at that very early cusp of, the floodgates opening up between Ethereum and Cosmos NFTs.
Yes.
But
Yes,
anybody can join these, and we're now starting to talk about interchain accounts, and that's also really exciting. Kind of talking a little bit about the different protocol liquidities we can do. It's going to make things really exciting, especially now with liquid staking coming along. So we do it. Anyone can come into a Gravity Bridge Discord. Let us know that you want to participate in the working groups. We'd be happy to have you.
Awesome. Thank you, Deborah. Awesome. Awesome. The future is cross-chain, and it seems like Gravity Bridge wants to lead that charge. Thank you, Deborah and Justin. I know that something happened on the bridge recently. It's called Canto, Canto. I went over the documents. I read a little about it. But for those that don't know, can you briefly go over about what is Canto and what does Canto means for Gravity Bridge?
Yeah, so Cento is a Cosmos SDK chain that is running a EVM. So it's a lot like Evmos in that there's a native EVM. You can execute normal Ethereum contracts. Now, what sort of distinguishes Cento is its goal to sort of try and commoditize swapping and sort of commoditize liquidity. So these are sort of new concepts where the whole principle of Cento is that a new project should be able to start and win by virtue of being better. So if I make a better DEX and I deploy it to Ethereum, where am I going to get my trade volume? All of it is concentrated in the Uniswap front end, the Pancake Swap front end, et cetera, et cetera. Building a better mousetrap does not get me anywhere. And it doesn't get me the liquidity I need to operate. And it doesn't get me, consumers are separated from, so people who are trading on the DEX, trading on DEXs are using DEX-specific interfaces, and they are separated from innovators who want to come in and provide them with, better options. And so it becomes very difficult for teams without large backing to gain users, because how do you even get them to go to your front end? So, and how do you get people to lock up liquidity? So this is where Cento comes in with its, by focusing on using trade aggregators on the front end so that users go to an interface like Slingshot, and Slingshot says, well, I'm just going to direct this to the DEX that does your trade the best. So as new DEXs come in, they are naturally used by the existing user base. Likewise with liquidity, in a way that I don't want to get too deep in explaining here because I'm afraid that I'll screw it up as far as a compact soundbite. But there's some really exciting stuff going on with Note and the lending market there, and you should read the documentation on it. And go and talk to the community about how it's going to make it easier for small projects and innovators to get access to liquidity without having to have big VC backing. And as you can see, this sort of decentralization first, like how do we improve and provide and how do we make the blockchain ecosystem better for small projects and prevent it from becoming sort of the same modern corporate chains, large projects that we see out, in in traditional finance and traditional business. And that really means that the philosophy of Cento and the Cento community aligns well with the decentralization ethos and premise of the Gravity Bridge community. And you said that, our Discord is more active and all of that. And I really attribute that, same thing with Althea, to being mission driven rather than trying to come in and sort of follow the coattails of whatever is popular in crypto right now and whatever is getting big VC backing, is to focus on the real premise that brought us all to crypto in the first place, like the excitement over being able to do something in a decentralized way, of being able to improve people's lives with technology and provide something that's really concretely better, not just better marketing.
Awesome, Justin.
That was an amazing soundbite. I just wanted to add, we talked a little bit about, Gravity Bridge being this empowering bit of infrastructure. This is I see the alignment there with Cento also being DeFi infrastructure, and this idea of kind of the Legos and the building blocks that empower these projects and this other technology to improve people's lives. So I think it's exciting, and it's been a success over there, and yeah, it's been lit. Check it out.
Totally. And yeah, the problem with the liquidity and this fragmentation and slippage and have to go to different interfaces to get one swap done. I found that ridiculous. Yeah, we're still early, right? But how cool will it be just to, from my wallet, being able to swap whatever I want and get the best deal? I believe you can do that with MetaMask, for example, but why not all wallets always? But yeah, cool stuff. Cool stuff. Looking forward to see how this relationship with you pan out in the future. So we already spoke about the initiatives you have and how you're working with the community. You spoke about how robust and secure is your validator set and how independent it is from the team, which I find amazing. Thank you. Can you, I believe you have one initiative for the validators. So this might be interesting for validators. It's called the Validator of the Month initiative. Deborah, if you don't mind, go over a little bit of that, please.
Yeah, so this was initially proposed by the Gravity Bridge Community Working Group, and it's the idea of kind of democratizing access to delegations. It's when somebody has Grav, they want to stake to a validator. It's we can go to the Mint scan and you can look at all the different validators, but it's really hard to kind of get to know them. So this gave us an opportunity to highlight, some of the smaller, mid-sized validators and, share a little bit about them. So, it's a community initiative where you nominate a validator and, the winning validator gets to have a bit of a, almost a blog kind of post about themselves and have that highlight. And it just is, that democratized access to know more about the different validators that you're staking with, and does that ethos align with yours? Is this where you want to stake your tokens? And so much of the time I've heard from folks when they're looking to delegate, they're like, well, I just delegated to the top validators because I wasn't sure and it seemed safe. So how do we change this? And it's a tough problem, and it's something that, the Gravity Bridge community, I think, continues to look at focusing on. And, we're certainly not to any sort of state of perfection. We continue to work on it. But I think these kinds of initiatives, highlight this issue and highlight the smaller validators who are doing a great job. And actually, one point I want to say too is, other than the Cosmos Hub, Gravity Bridge has the most amount of active validators in the set. So we're really, really proud of that. And the kudos along with the community and everything else really does go back to the validator set who run and operate Gravity, and they've done a great job. The updates are amazing. Usually an upgrade will take, less than a half an hour, and it's smooth and all that coordination. And so all y'all validating on Gravity, thank you so much for your hard work.
Totally. Yeah, I gotta appreciate the validators. And that's true. Since I'm working on with staking, I've been able to participate in some of the upgrades of Gravity Bridge. And I don't know if it was not the last one. I believe it was the one before the last. And it lasts like 10, 11 minutes. And everybody upgraded and reached consensus. And that was amazing. Really smooth upgrade. So yeah, too much kudos for the validators. And I agree with you, Deborah. Actually, when you're new to the Cosmos ecosystem or any proof of stake ecosystem, I don't know, usually you do think that the validators at the top, that the ones that have most stake, are the better option to go with. And yeah, I don't know if that can be attributed to that there is not much information about how decentralization should work in a proof of stake ecosystem, but I'm pretty sure that in the future we're gonna have tools and resources to find out how we can better decentralize this, because we are here to receive newcomers and we just gotta guide them on that process and not just led the mistake to these big validators that you see, that some of them are exchanges, and some of them actually don't care about how this chain develops. And this Validator of the Month initiative, it's great for smaller validators, in my opinion. Um, and this is funny because sometimes the validators that have like the best uptime, they never miss a block, they never double sign, they never been slashed before. Usually those are small validators or maybe a one person validator, but you don't know much about them, and they are contributing a lot to the network by being up when it's needed, right? So I do think that this initiative is great. I've seen others in the throughout the Cosmos ecosystem, but I do like this one because it's I believe there is you gotta have like a maximum amount of delegations. If you have more than those tokens, you cannot participate in the Validator of the Month initiative. So that's very clever of you, and yeah, keep it up, guys. Keep it up. This is actually a long way to go still, but I'm pretty optimistic on the future of decentralization in proof of stake ecosystem. Uh, well,
One thing I want to
go ahead.
the Validator of the Month program is open source, so other Cosmos projects could adopt that as well.
Yeah, please do, please do, please do. I would love to see more of that, and thank you for sharing, Deborah. Uh, and well, Deborah, let me leave you. I will leave you in the stage. Actually, the next question is especially for you. Uh, uh, I joined the crypto around February 2021, and it's been a long way from here, at least in my perception. I've seen good things, bad things, but one thing I have noticed is that back then you saw less women taking action, standing up, and making things happen, taking the lead. So there were you as I believe maybe the head of Gravity Bridge or the head of Althea network. I wanted to know your perspective on the women in the crypto space. What are your thoughts on that, and how do you feel about it?
Yeah, that's a big question, and it does. I think there is, definitely some opportunity space here that can be improved. I oftentimes feel like in order to have, equal or egalitarian platform, women have to work harder for the same sorts of, privileges. So, I think that's very challenging. And one of the ways that I think that we could improve this better is really, I think, the foundations and like the ICF and the Ethereum Foundation and these nonprofit or foundations that support the ecosystems have a real big opportunity to bring in diversity into the space. So technology in general is like this, right? It's very heavily male dominated industry and most of technology. But we've seen a lot of progress over the last 5 or 10 years. If we think about something like NASA, or if I think about the telecom space from the government side, they're with deliberate steps taken, you have much more diversity in, let's say, municipal telecom, the government telecom space than you do in the private sector, simply because those actions were taken. It was deliberate. Education was there. And so I think what I would love to see happen is collectively as ecosystems, and especially led by those foundations that are, that are really put in place to support the ecosystem. How many members of the ICF are women? Now that Tessa is no longer with us and over with Twitter, I mean, she's not dead. She's with Twitter. But I think there's definitely not representation there. Same with the Ethereum Foundation, or Solana or Avalanche or any of these layer ones. And this is where I think, hopefully collectively we can raise the voice and raise that amplification and bring those folks into leadership roles.
Totally. I hope they better be listening to this podcast and take action. Thank you, Deborah. And guys, these few minutes have been amazing. I'm very honored to speak with you and learn more from the people that are building this system of the future. We're building the future, I believe. So we're almost closing it out. Maybe this is the time for you to drop some alpha, talk about future plans. Can you tell me what are you most excited about the future of Gravity Bridge?
So I'm really excited about interchain accounts and this is not just for Gravity Bridge. This is for the entire Cosmos ecosystem, because getting into, once again, as you've seen now, sort of the Gravity Bridge community's philosophy is to be interoperable, be decentralized, and work together. And so interchain accounts is really going to start to bring together the Cosmos ecosystem to more than just a network of blockchains with bridges between them, but into a lot closer to a single environment. So with interchain accounts, I'll be, for example, able to send a transaction to Gravity Bridge that performs a swap on Crescent. And this sounds kind of trivial, but imagine if you can access all of the functionality of the entire Cosmos ecosystem from one jumping point. And that jumping point can be the Cosmos Hub, that jumping point can be Gravity Bridge Chain. And this really starts to solve a lot of the problems you see in the Cosmos ecosystem, where every chain, if they're like, oh, darn it, I need a DEX now, and I have to have a DEX on my local chain, kind of like, for example, Regen, so they want to sell eco credits. And, if anybody wants to swap, if they have one token and they need another, well, Regen would have to integrate a DEX. And, interchain accounts makes it possible to just go and swap somewhere else and have it happen right away, like it does on Ethereum. On Ethereum, you don't worry about going anywhere. Your funds are on Ethereum and you go from one application to another, and you care about functionality. And in this way, the Cosmos ecosystem, and I've said this a lot of times now because I think it's super interesting, is that, the ETH2 post-sharding vision and the Cosmos ecosystem vision are very analogous. It's very interesting because with interchain accounts, the Cosmos ecosystem is a decentralized network of chains that you can treat like one chain and has a lot of scaling capability. It's sort of naturally sharded as each chain is one application. And there's no one big validator set. Whereas over on ETH2, they have worked hard to make one big validator set. And then they're going to add sharding with subchains, which starts to look a lot like and solve many of the same problems as you see on the IBC and interchain account side. So we're starting to, I've always said that blockchains are kind of like planes in the early days of aviation. They all look different. They have different numbers of wings. They work differently. They all look weird. And over time, as technology evolves, planes all started looking the same because people were like, well, this is a good design, and we're going to stick with it. And this is what this should do. And we're really starting to see that in the major blockchain ecosystems where they're starting to look the same. They have the same number of wings, and maybe so I can only stretch this metaphor so far, but you see what I mean. And this is what really excites me, having been around since like proof of work was radical, is to see proof of stake and sort of blockchain ecosystems take that next step. Because the big question in 2017 was, so how are we going to do scaling? And it seems to me that at this point, scaling has been resolved, as much as a lot of people might want to say otherwise. And that is that some sort of network of chains seems to be the scaling solution, not really parallel execution or any of these dozens of other things people thought of. But it looks like it's either going to be the ETH2 strategy or, well, actually, I would say that the ETH2 strategy and the Cosmos strategy are the same. So I don't know. I don't know what the future holds. I can't make predictive estimates, but I can just say that it looks really interesting and that the Cosmos ecosystem has a real opportunity to do incredible things, especially with governance and cross-chain interfaces. Like imagine having an interface to the Cosmos Hub that let you swap everywhere, that lets you use every application in the Cosmos ecosystem without having to go to the individual UIs, or a wallet that said, oh yeah, I know where your money is. You're on the region UI. I'm just going to pull your funds over from Crescent for you. You don't have to worry about that. This sort of stuff is really exciting and is really great for Gravity Bridge, because Gravity Bridge is just a bridge. It's like a bus station. There's not much to do at the bus station. But with interchain accounts, you'll be able to do, Gravity Bridge will be able to reach out into the larger Cosmos ecosystem and execute things directly. And perhaps more usefully, the Cosmos ecosystem will be able to do things like say, hey, Gravity Bridge, what's the current price of this in Uniswap? And Gravity Bridge can say, well, I know that, here you go. Or you could be on like IrisNet or Crescent or Osmosis and say, oh, I've got this asset. I want to go trade it on Ethereum. Gravity Bridge, can you go and handle that for me? And, your funds go from Crescent to Gravity Bridge to Ethereum, are swapped, are brought back over and sent back. And from your perspective, you just sent one transaction to Crescent. These sorts of incredible operations are really what's coming up.
Exactly. You mentioned all those processes, and at the moment you have to do it very manually. Imagine doing all of that with just one click, one interface. How much time we can save on that? So let's see how it develops. I agree with you, Justin, on that vision. And for me, interchain accounts is gonna be huge for the Cosmos ecosystem. Can't wait to see it in action already. I'm also looking forward for interchain security, right? But that's something else. That's for another podcast. Interchain account, it's definitely gonna be so huge. I don't know if you have some extra thoughts, Deborah.
Yeah, I just wanted to also amplify what Justin was saying and to highlight the use case of protocol liquidity that, the DAO communities hold. So the same sort of, interoperable processes that can happen with interchain accounts with your user account can also happen with protocol liquidity. So you can have, Juno staking on Osmosis stacks or something like that and receiving, fees or something like that. Or think about that with liquid staking, right? So you have like Quicksilver, you have Staked Atom, and that could be sent around to different communities. And then, what's interesting about Cosmos is there is a lot of shared community here between all of the different blockchains. I think, probably folks have Osmo and Juno and Evmos and all these different, right? So the same, you can now do kind of shared governance in new ways that have never been thought possible before too. So from the community aspect, I think it's equally interesting how governance is going to evolve in a multi-chain way too. So Cosmos leading the way, IBC is amazing. Now we've got interchain accounts. It's very exciting in the future.
Oh man, I'm so pumped right now. So good to be on the Cosmos ecosystem. Thank you guys again. Just to close it out, is there something I should have asked you but I didn't ask you that maybe we should cover now? Nope.
Next, we'll have to do this podcast again and talk more about what's coming up. But yeah, no, thanks so much for having us. I think we covered all the good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Had lots of fun with you guys. Looking forward to collaborate more with you in the future, maybe in a podcast or in other ways. And to close it out, how can people get involved in the Gravity Bridge community? How can they know more about you?
So Discord is the best place to go if you're interested in interchain accounts, what's happening there at the ICS 721 and NFT space. Jump into the Discord, let us know what you're interested in, and there's a different working groups, community working group as well for you to plug into. Lots of great validators there. There's still open validator spots. So if you're interested in doing that, all the documentation's on the GitHub. We have a very welcoming community. So join us in Discord. That's the best place to get started.
All right. So you heard all what's happening about Gravity Bridge. Very interesting conversation with Deborah and Justin. Again, thank you guys for joining me. And for our listeners, remember to follow the conversation on our Stakin official channels, on Telegram, on Discord. Follow us on Twitter too. Be wary of scammers. If you need any assistance, feel free to reach out to us. And until next time.